ask you to think about someone that you have experienced who has an open heart and an open mind. And you see lots of word descriptors there. I'm going to ask you to picture that person in your mind that has an open heart and put the heart stamp by 2 characteristics that you would most use to describe them. And then do the same thing for the open-minded, the stars. So I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time to do that. So by all the words, yeah, nice. I see them coming up. Excellent. Look at all that. If you want to check your mic, just to make sure it's muted, but definitely unmuted if you want to talk. Look at that. That's excellent. What do you think, Marian?
I think it's pretty amazing. It's very amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of similarity, and at the same time, you know, we're very much using up most of the words on the screen, which is really interesting.
Yes, yes. You know, one thing too, if you look at the board and what everyone has marked, all of the favorable words for the top area are marked, but there's 2 words on each column that are unfavorable, and you don't see any of those marked. So we tend to think of open heart, open mind in a very favorable way. I'm going to ask a question, and to answer this question, I'm going to ask you to grab the participant panel where you've got the icons on the bottom. The yes and the no is really what you're going to need to use. So if you tap the top of your screen, you can see the participant icon. If you tap that, if it might be at the bottom of your screen. Usually all the tools in Zoom are at the top or the bottom. Ah. Oh, I heard that. And open up the participant panel. So here's the question. You're going to, for yes, you're going to use the green check mark. For no, you're going to use the red X. So here's the question. In general, for someone who's open-minded, open-hearted, is it intentional? In general, is it an intentional act that someone chooses to be open-hearted, open-minded? So if you agree with that, it is, in general, it's intentional. Go ahead and give us a green check mark. And if you don't, if you think it's unintentional, people don't really choose that, then you would do red X. And there's no right or wrong. We will not say right or wrong. It's just interesting to look at what we're going to be, you know, showing everyone. So, all right, so you can look, we've got quite a few. We have 2 red X's and then quite a few of the green check marks. Not everybody has answered, but by far we've got more check marks, which says, you know, in general, we think it's intentional. People really decide to have an open heart, open mind. And we're going to be looking at some really good tools today to help increase that. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do is open up your chat. And again, it's at the top of your screen. It might be in the more, but when you open up that chat, we're going to ask you to chat, what's the value, the benefit of having an open heart, open mind? So when you think about yourself personally, what's the benefit for you having an open heart, open mind, professionally and personally? So we're going to wait for everybody to use that chat. And don't be frustrated if you can't find all the tools. It's absolutely acceptable. It's a good chance for you to play around with Zoom. By the end of the session, you'll feel like a pro.
Perfect at it.
Yes, I love it. Thank you, everyone. People gravitate towards you. Wow, isn't that true? Connection, happiness. I'm more authentic. I can help others. These are fantastic. Understanding, greater empathy, receptive to new ideas. Yep. Able to understand people's motives and experiences. Thank you very much for those. Yep, very nice. All right, empathy. In your email that you received yesterday with your link, you were asked to identify a difficult conversation that you are currently having or need to have. And we would like to apply all of our tools today to, or let you apply all the tools that we talk about today to your own difficult conversation. So I'm going to ask you right now just to recall that. What's a difficult conversation in your life right now that you're either currently having or need to have? And if you have a piece of paper and a pencil right next to you, go ahead. And if you don't, that's okay too. Jot down that conversation. We'll be referring back to that conversation throughout. You won't need to share it with the whole class. You'll share it with one other person in the breakout room at the end of the session. So I'm going to just give you about 30 seconds to identify that difficult conversation you want to use in today's session.
Hum-de-dum-de-dum.
And it can be a work difficult conversation, a family difficult conversation, a neighbor difficult conversation. You get to choose. And again, you'll just share it with one other person in the breakout room. All right. Now, so if you've got that conversation in your mind, what I'm going to ask you to do is look back at all the words on the screen. When you are done having that conversation, what 2 words would you like the other person and yourself to use to describe you in the conversation? So if you would look at all of those words and pick 2. Which 2 would you like to be described as after that conversation? How were you? How'd you show up? Give you a couple seconds to do that. All right. So what I want to do now is turn it over to Marian, and she's going to start us into our content about those difficult conversations.
Thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
So our next section here, this section is about barriers, and we're going to actually talk about 2 different barriers that come in the way of having a difficult conversation. And the first one I'm going to mention is our ego. So when we think about ego, when I think about my ego, the first thing that comes up is we all need an ego, and her purpose is to protect us. So when I personify my ego, I think about my ego is like this beautiful, translucent, shimmering cloak that's very lightweight, and it keeps me warm. And when I wear this cloak of ego that's in balance, my chin is up and my shoulders are back, and I am proud. I have no challenges talking about my accomplishments. I feel good about myself, and I'm able to maintain a level of humility. So just this tremendous balance. I also have protection around me in terms of boundaries. So when you think about it, my ego helps keep me safe there too. I'm not letting people walk over me. I find my voice. I'm able to speak when I need to speak and be heard. So those are all effective uses of ego. Now, on the other side of this, there are times when my ego gets out of whack, when I get out of balance. So when I think about this in that cloak that I wear, then my cloak becomes really heavy, and it is dark, and it is weighing me down, and it's restricting me, holding me in. And what happens is, this is when I feel, in my words, it's like I feel like I'm under attack. So all of a sudden, in an example I give, somebody could say something to me. So Diane and I might be having a conversation on Tuesday, and she says something like, you know, Marian, you're looking a little tired. And when my ego was fine, I'm like, And I just kind of look at those comments and I go, am I looking tired? And I'm okay. When my ego feels like something's off and I'm out of balance, I might hear those exact same words and react. And I might go, what in the heck? Do I look tired? Do I look like crap? Do I have bags? And all of a sudden there's this story and there's this drama and all this stuff is going on. And that's when my ego is out of balance. So you can start to see relative to having a difficult conversation, how this might be a barrier, how this comes into play. So it's all about the balance. The other thing that happens when we're out of balance, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when we get to the second barrier, is our ego is trying to protect us. And sometimes in the spirit of keeping us safe, she's actually limiting us. She's keeping us in this box and from trying different things. So we'll come back to that one. So ego. And so when I mentioned to you this, my different reactions, whether I'm in balance or not, another way to think about this is responsiveness versus reactivity, right? When I respond, this is when I'm actually choosing the action that I get to take. And sometimes this happens in like a nanosecond, that I'm aware of my physiological state, and I catch myself. That's that awareness, that's that responsiveness I get to choose. The other side of that reactiveness, those stories, all that stuff that I think I see or hear, that's my reactivity in play. I am not choosing. That's when I'm having a reaction. So you may have heard of that amygdala hijack, a knee-jerk reaction. That's reactivity. So to further explain this, I'm going to tell you a little story. And this is a story about an artist. So this is an artist who's known all over the world, just tremendous painter and sculptor, and does phenomenal work. Well, he gets word through an astrologer that his time on the earth is coming to an end. And he says to himself, well, that can't be. You know, I'm too good to leave this earth. They'd miss me too much. So he comes up with a plan, and it's a masterful plan. So what he does is he creates these 11 statues, all in the likeness of himself. And if you saw these statues, you would think, how awesome are they? It would be like you can't tell the difference. They're alive, they're breathing. And that's exactly what happens. So when the angel of death comes and she knocks on his door, he jumps up on a pedestal. So picture it. He's this living, breathing soul amongst these 11 statues, all the likeness of himself. And the angel comes in and she's like, wow, she couldn't tell the difference. So she's like, oh my, now what do I do? So she goes back up to heaven and she tells God what happened. God starts cracking up and he says, angel, come here, let me tell you something. And he whispers a little something in her ear and he sends her back down to earth. So she comes down and she does as she's told. She opens the door and walks in the room. And she says to the room, oh dear, dear, there's been a mistake. There's a flaw. Well, the artist, whose entire identity is wrapped up in his perfection, do you think he responds or do you think he reacts? You got it. He reacted. He is so tied to that identity that when he hears that cloak shroud, it just suffocates him. He can't handle it. He jumps down off the pedestal and he screams at the angel, mistake, what mistake? I'm perfect, I'm perfect. And she looks at him and she looks up and she starts laughing. She goes, yeah, we got our guy. That's an example of what happens when we allow our ego to get out of balance and out of whack, right? So Diane is going to explain this. So relative to a difficult conversation, she's going to show us a little tool and kind of get us thinking a little bit about how does our ego show up and how do we want our ego to show up when we prepare for this conversation.
All right. Thank you very much, Marian. I love Marian as a storyteller. So we're going to use your annotation tool again. So if you want to grab your annotation toolbar, and the straight line, the draw, is what we'll use here. So I'm going to go to the next slide, and you see on the left-hand side of the screen, ego that's out of balance, and at the bottom, danger. And on the right-hand side, you see an ego that's in balance and safe. So I'm going to ask you to refer to your difficult conversation that you've been recording or that you recorded. And take your annotation tool and mark on that line, where is your ego in this conversation? Do you feel like it's a little bit out of balance where you're reactive, or it's in balance where you're more deciding your intentional response? So I'm going to ask you to take that tick mark, your annotation tool, just mark on the line, where is your ego for that difficult conversation? Ah, very nice. Isn't that interesting to be aware of what Marian talked to us about? Yeah, if we're aware of it, we can do something with that. Thank you for everyone who was marking on that line. And I want to know too, if you don't have the capability to mark on the line or mark on the screen, it's so okay. Just do it in your own mind or on your paper, and that'll work out fine as well. Yeah. I want to do a recap of the ego and just put it into perspective for our difficult conversation. So when we talk about the ego, I really want to be mindful of that. For how much is my ego trying to protect me? And watching my responses if it's protecting me too much, because I might be reacting. And there's also the other person. How much is the other person trying to protect themselves? And sometimes it's a forgiving thought. You know, that other person, they may be reacting to what I'm saying. Maybe they're really protecting themselves. So I love to think of the ego like this and use Marian's story for that. Right. And it is not always hard. I mean, it's not always easy to get our ego into check. So Marian has got an amazing activity for all of us that we can try when that's happening.
Yeah, so thank you, Diane. So people will ask me, they'll say, so I get this concept of responsiveness and reactivity. I'm just not sure when that's happening. It's hard for me to get into that place, into that state. So as Diane mentioned, and there's a lot of different techniques that people use. I have friends that listen to classical music. I know people that go on walks, be in nature. So this technique I'm going to take you through is simply a breathing exercise. And this allows us to kind of get into that mental state of a little bit more calm. So what I'm going to invite you to do is to participate along with me. And if you're comfortable, to close your eyes doing this exercise. If you're not, that's fine too. Just find an object in front of you that you can look at. But we'll just start by aligning your spine. So you sit up really straight and put your shoulders back. Your feet should be firm on the ground. You should feel comfortable, so not so uptight, but just be comfortable. And then slowly close your eyes and take in a deep breath. And as you breathe in, you'll notice that everything is filling up. Your stomach fills up, your lungs, your heart, your chest just fills up with air, and then a slow release. Okay? And we're going to do an exercise. It's called a 4x4 count. And so how this works, I'm going to count you through, and we'll do this 4 times. 4 breaths in, a pause, and then 4 count of 4 to breathe out. Okay? So just find your breath, and then we're going to breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, release, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, release, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, release, 2, 3, 4. One more time, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, release, 2, 3, 4. And then just let your breath return back to normal. Just breathe, just allow yourself to breathe. Okay, and then slowly we'll just come back into the room. So you might hear voices or sounds around you, feel your feet on the floor, and then slowly come back into the space. So 2 things to notice about this. The first thing is simply to notice. How we build our responsiveness is through noticing. It's really about building self-awareness. So you might notice how you feel a little bit differently now than at the beginning of the exercise, or you may not feel different, and that's fine too. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just paying attention, being self-aware, right? And then the other point about this is we did it, most of us, with our eyes closed. This is actually something you can do anytime, where you can just pause. You can find something across the room just to focus on and do just some deep breaths. And there's some physiological changes that occur that'll just help bring you down and just relax. So something you can do anywhere, anytime, okay? So that's an example of how we shift into that place of being responsive to help our ego get more in check. So the ego, as we mentioned, was the first barrier. The second one is what we call limiting beliefs. And these are really interesting. I noticed in the chat box as people were coming in, Diane asked a great question about things that get in the way. And some people were putting little comments in there and I thought, oh, how exciting, those are limiting beliefs, right? And we all have these. And so limiting beliefs, and this goes back to that second barrier. And when I was telling you about the ego and how sometimes she boxes us in, well, an example is she doesn't want us to get hurt. So to me, it's like a helicopter parent, where we're so concerned for the safety of others, whether that be our children or in our ego's case for ourselves, that we don't want to push them out. We don't want to try because you might get hurt. Limiting beliefs are an example of this, where there are certain things that they're just part of how we see the world. And we never stop to go, oh, is that actually true? Or is that just something that I've always thought is the truth? And until we can observe that and actually look at it objectively, it's just part of how we see things. So we've come up with a group of limiting beliefs, and Jill's going to launch a short poll for us. And what we would love it if you would do is think about that difficult conversation that you need to have. And then just check as many of these. So for some of you, it might be 1 or 2. For some of you, it might be 8. Just relative to that difficult conversation, what are some of the limiting beliefs that are potentially getting in your way? We're just going to give people some time to vote, and then we will share the responses with you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
So right about 50% of the group has voted. So we'll give a couple more minutes. There's a lot there to read through. And you can choose as many of them as you think are applicable. Just give another minute here. We're up to 70%. Okay, I think, okay, very good. Jill, if you want to show us how did we do? So let me just let you sit with that one for a minute. Can everybody see that?
Yes, it's showing up on the screen.
Awesome. Okay. Wow. So one of the things that to me is always incredibly validating when I see this is I think we have a tendency oftentimes to think, oh my, that's just me, right? And then when we see something like this, it's like, no, it's not. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that share some of these same concerns that we share. And that lifts the weight a little bit off the shoulders. So, as I look at this one that honestly to me is not surprising, is that second one. So 57% of us are saying, yeah, it's going to harm our relationship. A limiting belief, it's going to harm our relationship. And then I will be too emotional. I'm not good at these, right? I will look too weak. I'm supposed to know everything. So these are all ways that we frame things up. This is how we frame things up. So then the question becomes, okay, now that I'm aware of this, now that I can see this limiting belief, what do I do about it? How do I handle that? So, if I ignore the problem, it will go away. I love that one too. So everyone in here got a hit. But how I'll hurt the other person's feelings. Well, okay, knowing that, 2 things come to mind for me. I don't know about you, Diane. One is sometimes I think we tend to underestimate how strong that other person actually is.
Yes.
And that's where that limiting belief is actually a barrier to us, and it's a protector to us because it's telling us this story when in fact, you know what, oftentimes it is just a story. And that person has a lot more resilience than perhaps we give them credit to. And we might be underestimating ourselves to have a really empathetic, great conversation. Right, so it's just how we look at things. So Jill, thank you for sharing the poll, and everyone, thank you for participating in that. Very helpful. So now we're gonna shift out of barriers, and we're gonna move on to the next section, which is all about a model we call the open model, and Diane is going to talk to us about open.
Yes. You know, Tracy asked a question, Marian, is that true when you recognize that the person has an out of balance ego? And Tracy, that is such a great question because I might need to be more empathetic or more tender. And the model that we're going to introduce right now might even give you some tools. So let me show you that. And I really like this model. It's outcomes, perspective, engagement, and it spells open. And we've got a couple of tools for each one of those. And those tools are good for working with someone who might have that ego that's protecting them. So I really love that question that you asked. Thank you. And Marian, did you want to take us through the first?
Yeah, so our first, the O in open is for outcomes. And some of you may know Stephen Covey's work, and I love Stephen Covey relative to outcomes because I always think of that expression that he used, begin with the end in mind. And that's exactly what we're talking about when we think about outcomes. It's not focusing on the problem, but it's focusing on what is it that we're really trying to accomplish here? What's the outcome I'm looking for? And there's a lot of different ways that you can think about outcomes. Some people will whiteboard that out. Some people will come up with a list. One technique that we're going to use, and I'm going to walk you through this, is a visualization exercise where it's actually visualizing the outcome. So again, if you're comfortable, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes again and just join us on the short little trip. So close your eyes and just take some deep breaths. Back up straight with your shoulders back and feet on the floor. And just allow yourself to breathe just for a minute. Just get comfortable with your breath. And now I'd like you to envision a place. So this is a place where you go. It's some place where you feel really safe and comfortable and secure. And just allow yourself to go there right now. Just take yourself there and picture yourself there. Feel it there. So warm, tingling, just a nice, positive, warm, safe feel. So you're in this space. And I'm going to ask you two questions. The first question is, when you think about this difficult conversation, first question, what is the outcome that you're looking for? What is the outcome? What is the outcome? Okay. And now I'm going to ask you a second question, also relative to this difficult conversation. Think about that person you're going to have the conversation with. And the question is, what do you want for the relationship? What do you want for the relationship? So two questions. What is the outcome you desire? What do you want for the relationship? Okay. And then when you're ready, just feel yourself start to come back into the room and hear the sounds. Feel the sensation. And then when you're ready, gently open your eyes. And you'll see on the screen, Diane has put these two questions. And now just take a couple of minutes and just jot down notes, whatever comes up for you now.
About 15 more seconds. And then we'll move with the open model.
Great. So if that was helpful to you, it's interesting because people have different responses to visualization exercises, and sometimes just kind of depends on where you are at that moment. This is one technique that you can try. And Diane's now going to shift us to the P in open, which is all about perspective.
All right, thank you, Marian. Don't you wish you had Marian? You could just pop her up in your living room and do a visualization. I do. Since I'm friends with her, I get it all the time, but I know you're jealous. So let's talk about perspective. I love this letter of the open model. Perspective is about when we pull back, our perspective broadens. And so, and you know what, Tracy, we could even think about, you know, looking at, we're talking with that person whose ego is really protecting them. And you might keep that in mind with this activity. So I'm going to ask everybody to join me. If you have your participant panel on, you can see me. I'll actually do the hand motions. I want to do an activity that shows you perspective. So you're sitting up, take your two hands and your right hand, put it on the right side of your face, kind of touching your cheek. And the left hand, put that on the left side of your face. So really your hands are making boundaries. You can't, if you roll your eyes to the right or to the left, all you can see is your hands. You can see what's right in front of you. So you have a limited perspective. Now, if I keep my hands right where they are, but I pull my head back, so now they're moving away from my hands and I roll my eyes to the right and to the left, look at what happens. I see a lot more at what I have just broadened my perspective. And that's what that P is talking about. It's talking about seeing more options, more possibilities. Instead of looking at that person that's in front of me as reacting to me, maybe in an ugly way, I might broaden my perspective and see how they're protecting themselves and what I might do to help them feel safe. In fact, the last tool of our open model is engagement. And engagement is when we engage that other person with curiosity and non-judgment, creating a safe place for that ego to feel that beautiful shawl that Marian describes as more just gently protecting versus tightly wound protecting. And the way we engage that other person is through really listening to them without judgment. And if we think about that person whose ego is protecting them a little bit too much, if we create an environment of non-judgment, their ego might shrink a little bit. They're going to feel safer. And then asking questions such as, you know, tell me more about that. What's an example of that would help me understand your perspective? What is your perspective? So using those what or how questions that are very curious. And what we want to do is do a breakout room. And we're going to ask everybody to work with their difficult conversation. And I'm going to put up a slide. You're going to be going into a breakout room with one other person. Some of you might have two others, depending on how the system divides you up. But when you get into your breakout room, you'll have we're going to ask you to talk about two questions. Thinking about your difficult conversation that you need to have, how will you create a comfortable space for that other person? And then the second question, what might you ask them to engage with curiosity? So, what Jill is going to do is she's going to copy and paste these two questions into your chat box. When you get into your breakout room, you have the ability to pull that chat box back up and you can read those questions. But just to summarize, comfortable space, what kind of questions can you ask to engage, all right? And you'll be in that room for about 5 minutes, each person getting about 2.5 minutes. If you've never been in a breakout room, oh my goodness, you're in for such a surprise. I love it. And when you get in there, it's a little bit of a surprise. So take about 30 seconds to kind of look around and and then get right to it. So maybe whoever enters the breakout room first, if you would start, we'll send a broadcast message when it's time to switch. So we'll give you an extra, 30 seconds to explore that room. And so Jill, I have to stop sharing my screen so that Jill can put us into breakout rooms. So Jill, how are you doing with the breakout rooms? Kind of give us a...
Actually, Diane, I do not have that functionality.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem.
Yep.
No problem.
So can we?
I can do it. I'm going to do it. I can do it. Yep. All right. So we have 22 people. So we're going to create 11 rooms, and you're automatically going to be going in there. All right. So hold on to your seat. Here you go. And if you are on the phone, you probably won't have joined a breakout room. So we can have a discussion in the large room. So if you are still in the room and you would like to talk about the 2 questions, please speak up and we'll have a large room discussion. And then Jill and Marian, do you want to join a room just to see how they're doing? Maybe is there anybody in the main room that would like to talk? I see Laura and C. Peters. Paula. Jill, in breakout room, Kim is by herself. Would you join that room with her? I just noticed her partner's not. Oh, maybe she is. Paula just joined.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you very much. Okay. How about breakout room 6? Cheryl's by herself there. Oh, and it shows you've not joined. I guess it had put you in that room. I didn't realize that. Room 6 then, Jill?
Sure. You know what? Let me see what I can do. I was by myself, so I came out.
Okay.
So I see I'm in breakout
I'm gonna
room
move.
7.
I can move. Let's see what move do I want to move her to room 6. Is there anyone in the main room that wants to chat? Thank you, Jill. Sorry about that. That worked out perfect. All right. I think we have everybody's coming back. I'm going to ask you to grab that chat box if you would real quick. What's one thing that you talked about that you would do to create a comfortable environment? And what's one question that you might ask out of curiosity? So if you would grab your chat box and something about what you are taking away from that breakout room. Could be creating that comfortable environment, that safe environment. Yeah, we're going to the chat box.
Here we go.
There we go.
It's not an amazing experience.
That was very cool. That was very cool.
Yeah,
That
we got to
was
figure out how to
good.
do that. That's cool.
Grab the chat box if you would. What's a real quick, we don't have a lot of time left, but at least take a minute so everybody can read what you wrote. What's a way that you can
Oops.
create that comfortable environment? Maybe a question that you thought to ask. It's fun to see everybody's excited face. You know.
Just remember, you always got to look at the camera, not at the screen. You got to look at
I gotta raise my chair.
There you go. And Corinne's smirking, man. All I'm seeing is the top of her head. I'm not
Really?
seeing
Oh, okay. There you
Move
go.
your- there you go. All right. Much better.
Yeah, thank you for what you've written too. Think about what would benefit the other person in the conversation. Wow, talk about balanced ego. You know, not in the office, take a walk together. Those are good. We don't have a lot of comments, but the ones that are up there are amazing. So we've got a couple minutes left. We want to show you a couple more
Yeah.
slides.
Neutral
going to-
environment.
Yep, share the presentation again. And then Marian, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just waiting for you,
Yep.
the slide to
Right,
pop
yep.
up. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so I just want to kind of walk us through where we've been so far. So our agenda today, we talked about characteristics of open heart and mind. And if you reflect back on that, you'll recall that you identified a couple of things, how you want to show up, right? And Diane talked about the intentionality of that. How do you want to show up? Then we got into the barriers. We talked about the ego, how our ego in her guise to protect us, sometimes she gets us a little bit out of balance, out of whack. And also the other person, there was a great question about, you know, how, when that other person is really defensive, what do we do with that? And I think Diane's response was phenomenal. Empathize. Empathy is the cure to that situation. That's what people need. It's going to bring them down. It's beautiful. And then the open model, focus on the outcomes. Where do you want to go? Focus on the outcome. And then think about that perspective, pulling back. Incorporate that other person through engagement. We do those things and all of a sudden it's like we're not alone with this difficult conversation. Half of the solution is sitting right across the table from us. And it's just looking at it a little bit differently, right? We don't need to shoulder that all on our own, okay? And then our closing comments here. So we talked about all of this. This is about you having that difficult conversation, which we know you will. Because first of all, you're here right now. So take a bow for taking the time and to your leadership for presenting this to you. You got so many things on your plate right now and that you took an hour out of your busy day to do something for you. That is awesome. And our hope for you is that you take this information and you actually apply it. So if you don't remember anything else, you can come back to this one slide and go, okay, what was that last thing? Because if you're like most people, what you're going to do after you have that conversation, your little brain over here, that little ego voice is going to be saying, oh crap, I should have said this. I should have said that. I should have said this. That's not your good cloak ego. That is that restrictive, nasty old thing that burdens you down. And you just look at that and you say, you know what? Not today. No, thank you. I'm going to focus on what went really well. That's the part about having an open heart, open mind, and focus with the mindset of growth. And then you say, what's one thing that maybe I'll do a little bit differently next time? One thing. That's your self-growth. And then be kind to yourself. Be compassionate. In the world of today, good heavens, go take a hot sauna bath. Go do something nice for yourself and feel good about you, right? Be compassionate. And then as we close, I know you know where the chat box is because Diane has done a phenomenal job showing us. We would love you to answer this. 2 hashtags. What has come up for you in this session? Give us 2 hashtags describing key takeaway, just 1 or 2 words with a hashtag. What's come up for you in this session? Hashtag courage, love it. Empathy, perspective, calm, compassion, perception. Keep them coming, people. Visualization, empathy. Yeah.
What is that called?
Finding the word.
Man.
No ego. I think it's
No
60
ego.
minutes of peace.
Peace and love, baby.
Yeah.
Manifestation.
And then Marian, Jill wants to put up a poll too, if everybody would respond to that poll before you leave. And I've got one last slide, and then Corrine wants to close out as well. And if you would like a copy of the slides today, if you email us, and Jill will put the email address in the chat box, or if you'd like to know more information about the 9-class series, Expanding Leadership Capabilities, you can email us and ask about that as well. And so, Corrine, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Marian and Diane, for a wonderful session. We really appreciate your time and your efforts and all that. And I know that that 60 minutes of peace is really valuable to all of us at this particular time. So I also wanted to thank my co-chair, Sherry Muir-Irwin, who's also on this call, and then also Kim Zymek and Anju Bala, who are program chairs. And I'm Corrine Smareka with Professional Development. And we have some really great things coming up for you as well. So take a look and look out for these kinds of programs. On June 25th, we're going to be having Turn Trauma into Triumph, the Triple C, with Linda Taliaferro, who is our past president. And she's founder and CEO of the T, the Extra Effort LLC.
That's awesome.
Well, yes, and then we'll also have on July 23rd, we're going to have another virtual happy hour on power presenting for the virtual presenter with Christine McKenna, president of Bluestone Executive Communications. So we're all looking at being more powerful presenters here in the remote environment as well. And so we thank all of all of our and these also will be gratis for our members and guests, because we really do want to provide some kind of transition into the new normal that I think we're all experiencing as well. So thank you again, Diane and Marian, and I will turn it back over to you, Diane. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Yes.
We really
Thanks,
appreciate
Fran.
everybody experimenting and working with those tools. So we hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we really appreciate you completing that last poll as well. And we'll stay on. If anybody has any questions and wants to open their mic, please feel free to do that. Thanks, everyone.
Hey,
Excellent.
Sherry.
Thank you, Diane.
Sherry.
Marian.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys
Thank
are
you. It was
fabulous.
great.
Sherry,
Thank
this
you.
is for you. This is just for you, Sherry.
Okay. Love it.
Just for you, girl.
Thank you. I'm getting ready to head out in about an hour. So.
Oh, man.
Well, I love you in the lounge chair too, girlfriend.
Oh, man, I'm telling you what. I'm
Yeah, I like that.
That's 60 minutes of peace right there.
Oh, I'm
All
telling
right.
you, you got that right.